Hi, Rick.
Hey, Rick.
I don't know. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, all right.
Okay, so we are now streaming live on Facebook, in addition to being live here on Zoom.
Oh,
So,
scary.
yeah, technology is really amazing. There's so much happening so fast, and even when you're really involved in the area, it's happening so fast that it's really, really hard to keep up with. So I'm trying to do my best, and sometimes we succeed and sometimes we don't. So we have a really interesting discussion today. WFH, work from home. And everybody's doing it. So here we are. My name is Cynthia Wade, and I'm the founder and managing director at do-over.me. And welcome to my home office. I'm going to do just a little bit of housekeeping here and tell you, number one, as I said earlier, technology is not my strong suit. So I know how to do what I know how to do, but there are some things now that I'm trying to learn how to do that I think I know how to do. And then, I don't know, somebody changes it. And then I can't figure it out. So I'm doing the best I can. If you've got any ideas or if you can help in any way, please reach out to me because I would love to have your help. Anyway, Cynthia at do-over.me or 630-402-0429 is how you can get a hold of me. I want to share with you today that I have an office mate, and right now, Bella, the do-over.dog, is sound asleep on the futon in the office next to me. But if she hears something outside that she feels strongly might be endangering us, she will let us know and she will start barking. So if that happens, she will calm down in just a few minutes and we can continue on with our meeting. But right now, I just want you to be aware of that. So today, what we're going to talk about, as I said, is WFH, work from home. Well, I had been thinking about this for a while, and I realized that I had a book, this book, Remote, Office Not Required, which was written in 2013. So here's what I can tell you about 2013. The guys that were writing this book, Jason Fried, who is here in Chicago where I'm at, and David Heinemeier Hansen, who is in Europe, in the Scandinavian countries, decided to collaborate on a business. And they didn't see any problem at all with the fact that one of them was going to be in Chicago and one of them was going to be in Northern Europe. They knew that the technology not only existed in 2013, but would continue to grow and develop through the years and get better and better, thus making remote working a reality for everyone. At the same time that they were writing this book, they started writing it in the beginning of 2013, and it was published in October of 2013. In January of 2013, you guys recognize the name of Melissa Mayer? At the time, in 2013, she was the president and CEO of Yahoo. And at the time that she came on board, Yahoo had a significant amount of remote employees working for them. And she announced one of her very first actions that she took across the board as president and CEO was to really, not totally 100% eliminate, but pretty darn close, curtail the number of people working at Yahoo who were actually working remote. Isn't it interesting that fast forward all these years, and here we are now in 2020, Melissa Mayer is no longer the president and CEO of Yahoo. She left there in 2017, but here we are still talking about not only this book, but more importantly, about working from home. So these guys who wrote this book were really visionaries. They saw the future and they started preparing for the future and started to write about helping us to prepare for the future long before it even happened. As a result of all of this, in the years between 2013 and now, what has happened is that all of these different platforms have developed that allow us to do this work more successfully. It even has language that's developed around it that we use when we're talking about what it's like to work remotely. And we're going to talk about some of those things today, and we're going to get involved in what it's really like now in 2020 to be working from home. And what you're going to be amazed at is that this book, even though it was written in 2013, is just as relevant today as it was back then. So, a couple things we're going to start out by talking about. When we put together an outline and plan to do a discussion of a book like this, we don't expect you to read the book. Part of the value that do-over.me is providing you in this kind of a book review is that we have already read the book. We know what the book wants to say, and we've put together a 4-page outline here that we're going to send you after this event is over, along with the audio of this meeting. So that in that way, you can listen now. You don't have to be tied to taking notes because you're going to get an outline. You can take notes if you want to. That's always, advisable, but you don't have to. And then when it's all said and done, you're going to get not only the outline, but you're also going to get the audio to be able to listen to at your leisure and go back and re-listen to things that maybe you didn't quite get everything the first time it was said to you. So one of the things that you need to understand about these two guys, Jason Fried and David Heinemeier Hansen, is in addition to writing this book, remember I told you one was in Chicago and one was in Northern Europe, they started a company together. And when they started the company, it was called 37 Signals. Why? I have no idea. I couldn't find any of that information. But anyway, it started and it became very successful, but it morphed into a company that today is known as BaseCamp. Just give me a show of hands. Have any of you ever heard of BaseCamp? Okay, so BaseCamp is probably the premier project management and internal communications tool for companies that have remote workers, because it's a way that everybody can come on board and be able to work from wherever they're at and look at consistently updated information so that everybody, hold on one second, so that everybody is able to have access to the same information, regardless of the time period that they're logging in or where they're logging in from. Now, since BaseCamp was established, there's other things that are doing a similar kind of thing. At do-over.me, we use Google Drive because Google Drive allows a similar kind of thing. It allows us to share information with each other in real time so that even though we're not together physically and we are not necessarily even in the same time zone, that everybody who is logged in to Google Drive is always getting the same updates of information. So these different kinds of platforms that are currently available are really important for us to make ourselves aware of and understand how they work, because as we've seen, in a split second, the world changes. And those of us who used to go to an office are now working from our homes. So of all of the things that these authors thought about way back in 2013 that would help us get to this point. You know, they talk about passive and active interruptions in a workday. You know, they go on and on about why commuting is really bad for you. You know, they talk about quality of life. They talk about cost savings. They have a lot of different reasons why they think that we're going to be moving to this in the future. I don't think coronavirus was on their list of things at all. And yet here we are, you know, watching what the world has seen happen in the last 4 months. And across the world, this pandemic has spread, and we've watched country by country. And now here we are in the United States. And depending upon where you're at, you know, some of us still are under shelter at home orders, and only essential businesses are being allowed to open and operate normally. And so many people who never really even had remote work on their minds are being forced to work remotely. The more you know about this, the more you understand how this works, the more successful you're going to be in a work from home situation. And as a result of that, the more successful that your company is going to be. So, we're going to talk a little bit about this, and I encourage you to stop for questions or clarifications, or to share some information as you need to. As we go through and do this, you're going to have to unmute yourselves and then, or raise your hand or put something in the chat. I don't care how you do it, but one of the things that we want to do is make this interactive, because it's been my experience, especially when we're working with adult learners, that the more interactive you can make the experience, the more positive it's going to be. Okay, so a couple of things that we want to talk about is that we want to talk about all of the different technology that's available. We started to talk about it when we talked about BaseCamp and Google and Google Drive. There's a lot of other different things that are available out there. And what you need to do is to make it your business to find out what your company is using and use it, learn to use it effectively. All of these organizations have online platforms, so it's no excuse to say that your company didn't give you the kind of education and training that you need in order to be able to do this. You need to be able to be proactive about that and go out there and find that information. And there's all kinds of tutorials, like on Zoom, for example, which is obviously another platform that 4 months ago so many people had never even heard of. And now here we are, we're doing everything on Zoom. I mean, I've heard of people in the personal parts of their lives, they have family bingo nights via Zoom, and they play poker together via Zoom. And now they have this new thing, I forget what it's called, but where you have a party online, you know, via a platform like Zoom. So the reality is that this was the future, but now it's today. And you need to make yourself as aware of that as you can. So, like, as I started to say on Zoom, even if you don't have an account on Zoom, you can go in and you can log on to their website, and you can go through all kinds of different tutorials that they have. Some of them are things that you're going to read if that's the way you like to learn. Others are videos that you're going to watch if that's the way you like to learn. But they're all designed to give you the information that you need in order to be able to use Zoom as successfully as possible. So Zoom and many of the others like GoToMeeting and Skype, they all have also different levels of membership. So we as individuals, or do-over.me as a small not-for-profit, we may not have the biggest and the fanciest of all memberships. We buy what we need in order to do what it is we need to do. But you as an individual, if you wanted to look at this personally, you could get on to Zoom with a membership at no cost to you. Now, there are certain parameters that are tighter for that individual that's not paying anything than if you go just to the next step up and pay $14.99 a month. There's a difference between features, and then there's, packages upwards of that. But what I'm saying to you is that when you're trying to figure out how to work at home, I don't think I'm so unique, as I said in the beginning, in saying that technology is not my strong suit. I think many of us are in that situation. And especially, as I said, with this kind of technology, because it's changing so dang fast. I don't know if you guys saw on Monday, I was supposed to do a Facebook Live at 4 o'clock on Monday. Monday morning, I went in to Facebook Live and I was going to do just like a 3-minute update and warning and announcement to remind people that I was going to be on Facebook Live at 4 o'clock. Got on, did my little thing, got off, no problem. Spread it around the communities, and everybody knew what was happening. And I didn't think anything of it until like 10 minutes to 4 when I went to go on to Facebook again. And I swear by all that I hold dear, it looked totally different at 4 o'clock that afternoon than what it looked like at 10 o'clock that Monday morning. And what Facebook, I don't know if you're aware of this, they're in the process of changing their graphic format. And they are literally doing it page by page. And it just so happened that on Monday in the morning, they had not updated the how to go live on Facebook page yet, but by 4 o'clock that afternoon, they had. So there I was. I didn't know what to do because I couldn't figure it out. Well, I finally did, because, the best of me and the worst of me is my persistence. But what I'm saying to you is that the more we avail ourselves of these technologies now, the more we're going to learn. And even though, yes, they are a little bit different from one to one, and if you get involved with a company that has a different platform than like Zoom or Facebook Live or whatever it is, BaseCamp, then yeah, you're going to have to learn what is going to be unique to that company. But you're going to have a way bigger head start than those of us who are sitting home and twiddling our thumbs and not even aware of this language, let alone how this basic technology works. And one of the reasons why this is super important, not all, but many of the people that are members of the do-over.me tribe are older workers. And many of you express concerns about ageism. And I'm here to tell you that it's not your age that a future employer is objecting to. It's your lack of relevancy. It's your lack of knowledge and understanding of what's trending. So if you come in and you don't know anything about the work from home arena and the different kinds of platforms that are available, that's going to be a big red flag to a company, because they're going to look at you and think, oh, what's with this lady? How come she, doesn't understand how to work this? She's just some old fart who really doesn't want to learn and grow and be successful anymore. She just wants to put in her time. Well, you don't want people to think that about you. You want them to think that you're bright and vibrant and, that you believe in lifelong learning. And the way that you do that is by availing yourselves of these kind of technologies. Specifically, in this case, we're talking about the ones that you're going to use when you're in a work from home situation. So does that make sense to everybody? Is everybody with me? Okay. Couple of things that I want to spend time on and talk very specifically about are life as a remote worker. And before I get to that, I just want to tell you that we have a surprise for you today. Actually, Joanne found and shared this with us. Jason Fried is offering this book to you at no cost. And we're going to share that information with you when we send you the follow-up information about this webinar. So you can go out anytime after, I think it's the 10th of May. I thought I had it written down. The 10th of May, excuse me, the 10th of April. You can go out anytime after the 10th of April, purchase this book, take a photograph of yourself with this book and the receipt, and email it to Jason, and he will send you the cost that you paid for that book. He will reimburse you for the full amount of that book. That's how important he thinks that this information is to get into your hands. Okay? So, we're going to talk now a little bit about life as a remote worker, because for many of us who haven't been doing this for a while, it's hard to kind of figure out what to go and how to set up a scenario in which you're going to be successful. And I want to share this with you because I want you to learn how to do this and do this well, so that whether you already have a job that you're working from home with and are maybe in the process of looking for a new position, or whether you have lost your position as a result of COVID-19, or whether it just so happened that you were looking for a position when all this COVID-19 stuff started and you're now stuck at home. Regardless of what situation you're in, these are ideas that are going to help you to be more successful in managing your time as a remote worker, whether you work for yourself, whether you work for a company, or whether you work for yourself in the sense that you're actually in full on job search mode. So, one of the things, if you pay attention to anything on social media these days or on traditional broadcast media, TV and radio, anybody who's anything that talks about managing time and life and emotions during this really difficult time starts off with one thing, and that is you need to learn to live in the moment. You need to learn that today is all you can really count on. You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. You don't know what's going to happen a month from now. We don't know when these restrictions are going to be lifted. We don't know when we're going to be able to go out and move about like we used to do. So right now, focus on the moment. And one of the best tools that I know to help you to do this is being able to practice gratitude. And people look at me and they say, well, Cynthia, what does gratitude have to do with coronavirus and why I can't work today? And I tell you, I mean this, it has everything to do with it. And again, the psychologists and the psychiatrists and the neurologists that study brains all will tell you that the data exists that will tell us very conclusively that if you have a daily attitudes of gratitude practice, that you will learn to be a happier person. You will learn how to bring that positive attitude to everything that you do. So it starts out with awareness. You have to be aware of what's happening around you. And then you have to stop yourself at least once a day. 3 things. What are you grateful for? Today, I'm grateful that the sun is shining. And maybe it's not 70 here in Chicago like it is in the South, but it's still going to be close to 60. And the sun is a summer sun that's shining brightly. And it really makes all the difference in the world. What else? I got up this morning, and in spite of the fact that I haven't had a haircut in, gosh, I can't tell you how long, because I was scheduled to go for one right before all this started, and then she had to cancel it when they, told us we had to shelter in place. I got a compliment on my hair this morning. So that's something that I'm grateful for. What's the next thing that I'm grateful for? It's something that you guys can't see from where you're at, but when I got up this morning and sat down to try to work, I had been struggling with something when I went to bed last night, and I just couldn't get it right. And so I got up this morning and I sat down to try to do it again like that. it fell right into place. Okay. So there's always something there that you can be grateful for. If you start and or end your day with that practice of gratitude, I guarantee you that whatever circumstance you find yourself in, it will be better and more positive, and you will be a happier and more positive person. So that's the first thing I want to tell you. The next thing, life as a remote worker, establish a structure. Keep to a schedule. At do-over.me, when a member comes in and they're actively looking for a new position, one of the things that we talk to them about is a timesheet. Now, some people get real bristly and it's like, whoa, a timesheet. I don't want to be punching a clock all the time. I'm not saying that you have to have a timesheet in order to keep track of how much time you're spending. In fact, one of the best things about working remotely is that it's taught us that it's not about the time that you spend working. It's about what you accomplish during the time that you're working. It's about your productivity. But in order to start the conversation with most people, we start with timesheets because that's a concept that most people understand. But we quickly add in productivity and accomplishments during that period of time so that we're saying to Jim, Jim, it's not just that I want you to commit to spending from 9 till 11 every morning in looking at and responding to postings of ads. It's that during that time of 9 to 11, I want you to discover and connect with at least 6 or 8 different companies, different hiring authorities, different positions that are going to be valuable for you. So what's important in that is not the 2 hours from 9 to 11, but what Jim is going to accomplish during those 2 hours. But if you don't have the structure in place that blocks out your time to tell you what you're doing when, it goes all over the place, and then that really messes up your productivity. It's really hard to list your achievements when you don't even know what you're supposed to be doing when. So one of the things in this situation where we're at now of being remote workers in the time of coronavirus is we need to build a structure for ourselves that works for what we want to do from a work perspective and what our family needs to do. And this is different for everybody. And this is one of the reasons why, with do-over.me, we say all the time, we meet you where you're at. Because what Jim needs to have happen in terms of a timesheet and accountability is going to be different from what Mary needs to have. Mary may be a mom with 4 kids running around and a husband that now is new to this whole working from home thing, whereas Jim might be an experienced worker and he lives by himself and there's nobody but him and the dog that's asleep on the futon. So they need different things. So one of the things that we encourage you to do at do-over.me is look at your life and take into account the people that live with you and what they need, and put together a schedule that's going to be workable for all of you that are living together. Because if it's not workable for all of you, it's probably not going to be workable for any of you. And then once you have that schedule down, you share it with everybody. So this is another reason why at do-over.me we use Google Calendar. So those of us who work together at do-over.me, we each have our own Google Calendar and we can put whatever we need to put on our Google Calendars, but we also can share our Google Calendars with each other. So if I'm working with somebody and I have a really super important question that I need to ask Mary, I can look at Mary's calendar and determine whether or not she's in a meeting or not. And if she's got it on her calendar that she's in a meeting, I know that there's no point in picking up the phone because she's not going to answer it. So I can either send her an email or send her a text. If it's a short question, I can ask it right away. If it's longer, I can ask her to call me. So that ability to create a structure using this technology that I've been talking about and sharing it with the people that you work with is really, really important. Being able to keep a timesheet where you're chunking time. So are any of you familiar with this concept of chunking time? Okay. Chunking time means that you're putting similar things together, and it helps with increasing productivity because you're literally not like a pinball bouncing all around between, stimulus and obstacle all the time. You're staying in one lane for a period of time. So like when you're putting together this timesheet, what I talk to people about is, okay, from 9 to 11, your chunk is going to be from 9 to 9:45. Your chunk is going to be to review all of the new job postings that are on LinkedIn and Indeed that have been generated and come to you because of the searches that you have set up. You're going to go through in that 45 minutes. You're going to decide which are going to be savable, which are not going to be able to be savable, which are not of interest to you for whatever reason. And you're making decisions pretty quickly, okay? And you're not saying maybe, you're saying either it's a yes or it's a no. It's not a maybe because you don't want to have to go back and think about it again. So during that 45 minutes, you now have put yourself into a situation where out of maybe, let's just say the 30 postings that were shown to you by LinkedIn, you've got 6 that are solid. Okay. And then what happens after that 45 minutes are up? You get up, you go walk around. You get up from your desk, you go get another cup of coffee, you use the facilities, you let the dog out, whatever it is you're going to do, but you get up and you walk around. You come back again at 10 o'clock, and on your 10 o'clock calendar, it's going to say respond to new job apps. So then you've got these 6 that are sitting there waiting for you, and you're going to look at them again, and then you're going to actually start to respond to them. And you're going to respond to each one individually between 10 o'clock and 10:45. And then at that point, hopefully you've got those 6 done. If not, you can spend a little more time or come back to it. And then you're done. And then, maybe from 11 till 12:30, you've got education time. What does education time look like? It can be a book that you're reading. It can be a seminar or a workshop that you're going to. It can be a conference call that you're on, but that's blocked out. 12:30 to 1:30, that's lunchtime. You're going to get up from your desk again. You're going to go into the kitchen. You're going to make something to eat. Maybe you're going to go out and take a short walk. And then when you come back again at 2 o'clock, you're going to have some other chunk. What that means is, let's say the chunk at 2 o'clock is calls. So you're going to follow up on the calls that you have scheduled for yourself based on job postings from the week before. Okay. What happens is you're going to get a whole lot more done if you're doing the same things in the same chunk of time, as opposed to intermingling them all, and then you lose the flow and you become less productive. So at 9 o'clock in the morning, you don't want to, in 1 minute be looking at your job postings that have been sent to you, and in the next minute be talking on the phone, and in the next minute be writing a cover letter for one of the jobs that you really like, and then in the next minute be thinking about that workshop that you were going to try to do at 9:30. You want to have it all organized and chunked in similar batches so that you're going to just stay on one thing until it gets done, and then you're going to flow to the next thing. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes.
It's a huge concept in productivity, and especially needs to happen at home, because if you got yourself in that situation where you've shared that schedule with people, they're going to know where you're at in the course of your day, and it's also going to give them a little bit more room to interrupt you if they have to. So let me tell you about a really fun thing that I heard. A friend of mine. So this woman, she's a very dynamic businesswoman with her own business. and her husband worked outside of the home, and they had 2 school-aged children at the time that she was telling the story. And most of the time, the kids were at school, but there were certain situations in which they were home, like if they were, dealing with COVID-19. So if you've got a house full of kids, this would work really well. You could adapt it a little bit if you needed to, but what my friend used to do is when she was doing something that was really important, this was like, you cannot interrupt me unless there's blood and somebody's dying. And then, okay, you can interrupt me. Only if there's nobody else, only if your father's not home or the neighbor's not available. And what she would do is she would wear a flower in her hair. She would get one of those pick things that women have for their hair, or a pick or a clip or whatever. And she would put that flower in her hair, and in a split second, her kids would walk up to her, and from a big distance away, they could tell if she had that flower in her hair, they better figure out another way to deal with their problem, because mama did not want to be interrupted. So you could do the same thing. Some of you guys wear hats, some of you don't. I don't know, maybe you could even put a flower in your hair, but if not, maybe it's your hat. If you have your Bears hat on, you don't interrupt me, because I am a serious football fan. And when I have my Bears hat on, you do not want to interrupt me. Now, if I have my Blackhawks hat on, yeah, I really like the Blackhawks, but I can be torn away from that much more easily than I can from the Chicago Bears. So whatever it is that's going to work for you, find that signal that's going to help you and your family to create those boundaries so that everybody understands what can happen in what kind of situations. Okay? And then the other thing you want to be careful of when you're creating this structure and this timeline is you want to make sure that in as much as you can, you give people advance warning of what's going to happen, especially if it's a deviation from the existing plan. So if normally you've got on your calendar at 2:00 in the afternoon to do follow-up phone calls, then people are going to know that that's what you're going to be doing during that period of time. And if you have that little flower in your hair, it's like you're on a really important call and they can't interrupt you. But all of a sudden something changes and there's this really cool webinar that you have an opportunity to participate in that's happening at 2:00 on Wednesday afternoon. Does that mean that you don't do it? No. You can change your schedule. When you have a schedule and when you have a timesheet and you laid things out, that doesn't mean that you can't change it. It just means that you're making a conscious, intentional choice to make that change. And if that's what you want to do, then that's what you do. But when that happens, you make sure you give everybody else a heads up. So guys, at lunch you might want to share, or via text you might want to share with the family, the rest of the people that live in your household. At 2:00 I'm supposed to be making phone calls. Well, today at 2:00 I want you to know that I'm going to be on a webinar. And it's going to go from 2 till 3, and preferably no interruptions. But if you have to talk to me, it is recorded, so I would be able to break away. So give everybody the warning about what's going to be happening, and then they'll know. And if you do this, then they're going to be much more respectful of the boundaries that you've set, because you've clearly explained them and understood them. And then the other piece of this puzzle is, that saying, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. If you expect the people in your household to respect your boundaries as you've chosen to share them, then you have to get them to share with you what their boundaries are, and you have to respect them. Okay? Goes both ways. Okay? So we talked a little bit about this before, and this is one of the big things that is different about work from home, and that's computing differently. And what that means is that you as an employee and the people that you work for as the employer, one of the big challenges in getting comfortable with work from home is this whole idea of how will I know whether they're working? How will I know what they're doing? How will I see any results? And the same is true if you're working for yourself and you're actively searching for a job. So it goes back to what I said before. When you're starting to make plans and create that structure, when you create a goal for yourself, make sure it's measurable and quantifiable, not just in terms of the time, but in terms of the things that you want to accomplish. So in other words, instead of saying that I'm going to spend 45 minutes looking at the job apps, you're going to spend 45 minutes and come out of it with at least 6 solid job opportunities. And that way, if you come up with 6 right away, you have 2 choices. You can either keep going and get more if there's more information there, or you can say, I hit my accomplishment and I can go out and take a little walk because it's such a great day. So what you're really measuring and what we're really looking for here is productivity, achievements, not the time spent. Okay. The other thing that's really important about working from home is the whole idea of a change of scenery. One of the things, again, I do a lot of reading and I do a lot of reading of books where people are writing based on research that psychologists and neuroscientists have done about how we work. And I think it's especially fascinating now with all the new tools that they have that can actually measure what's going on inside of our brain. So one of the things that they tell us is that you need to be putting yourself into calm situations that are different from your normal, crazy, hectic workday in order to access your best creativity. So if you want to be truly innovative and find solutions to these problems, if you want to be truly creative, and I'm not talking about artistic, I'm not talking about, although that's a part of it because creativity is part of being artistic, but what I'm talking about is can be pure business problems. If you want to be creative and innovative in terms of how you're solving problems, you need to put yourself in a different situation where you have a different perspective, preferably a perspective that brings some calm to your mind that's always racing around really quickly in your business situations. So one of the things that working from home does really well is it allows you to change the scenery. It allows you to sit in your kitchen or sit in your office or wherever it is that you're sitting in your home doing your work. But then when you need that break time, you're going to be able to get up. And even if you're just walking to the kitchen and looking out into the backyard or walking out the front door and watching the kids play in the courtyard for a few minutes, what you're doing is you're giving yourself a different perspective. And, it sounds like a really little thing, but just like those attitudes of gratitude that I talked about in the very beginning, it's so important in terms of giving a reboot to your brain so that you're going to be in a better position to keep going and to keep moving forward. Which brings us to the next thing, and that's staying motivated. So one of the challenges that some people have with working from home is they have a challenge staying motivated. We talk a lot about motivation at do-over.me, and we think it's really important to understand where your motivation is coming from. In most cases, the best way to stay motivated is with intrinsic motivation, something that's inside of you that's causing you to always want to be finishing what you start, to be doing the best at whatever it is that you choose to try to do, rather than having an extrinsic motivation, which is your employer. Now, the reality is that employers often have a whole lot of influence on our motivation, because if we have the kind of role in life where right now we're getting a paycheck from somebody and we desperately need that paycheck, then that employer does have a lot of motivation. But that's not the best scenario for anybody. The best scenario is always to have the intrinsic motivation inside yourself. So one of the things we talk a lot about is, where does that come from? And what does it motivate? What does it take to motivate you? And that's where self-awareness is huge. You have to understand the kind of person that you are. You have to understand what kind of an environment you work best in. You have to understand what your unique strengths are, and so that you're finding yourself in a position where more times than not, you're going to be able to be leading with those strengths and delivering on those strengths. If those things are not happening for you, because you're not self-aware, or because you've not found a situation in which you are more compatible, where the culture is compatible with what your gifts and strengths are, then it's really, really tough to stay motivated. So that's something that you need to be thinking about. And then the last thing that I want to talk about in terms of life as a remote worker is making sure you're not ignored. So one of the things people always say is, well, if I'm in an office, I can make sure that my voice is heard and that people are paying attention to me. And that's true, but you can also do that from home. The thing that you need to be focused on is being a worker that produces exceptional work on time and under budget. A worker that always can look at things and bring a creative and innovative approach to solving a problem for the company. Because those are the things that are going to make you stand out, not the number of hours that you're putting in at your cubicle every day, but rather those concrete, tangible achievements that we are going to be able to point to, that you're going to be able to point to, that are going to make people sit up and take notice of you. Okay? So just to recap this section really quickly before we move on, you want to build a routine, create a structure for yourself. You want to set clear boundaries. You want to compute differently. You want to have different perspectives that measured productivity in different ways. You want to have different scenery so that in different situations you're looking at things in a different kind of a way. You want to figure out what you need to do individually to stay motivated, and you want to make sure that the work that you're producing is what's going to get you noticed. Okay? So as we wrap up here, I want to share with you one of the things that you're going to get when you get this 4-page outline is you're going to get some definitions of some new words, which I absolutely love. And you're going to be able to have an opportunity to figure out how you can take these words and use them in your vocabulary. So that's something. And I want to share with you a couple of them that you're going to be seeing. There is a new term that has been coined that's called a distributed workforce. And this is important to understand because you want to be looking for companies that describe themselves as distributed workforces if you're somebody that's looking for a job that you want to work remotely. Because in this world, that's the new term that's used for companies that have a very high percentage of their workers that are working remotely. That's called a distributed workforce. And then most companies that you're seeing in today's day and age is really a hybrid, right? There are certain things that they can do from home and certain things that they can't. So they actually end up with a workforce that is hybrid. Some work from home and some don't. And it's based on the functionality of their job and what it is that they're asked to produce and achieve, rather than on whether they trust them or can have the situations such that they can have them off site. And then the last ones are companies that don't allow people to work from home at all, which is kind of, I think, the direction Melissa Mayer was trying to go with Yahoo way back in 2013. I think we can all agree that those companies are dinosaurs. And I think that in most situations, they're going to probably not survive COVID-19 well, because this is the future. Okay, so you're going to get those new words, definitions of new words. The other thing you're going to get is favorite quotes. So one of my very most favorite things to do when I read a new book is to pay attention to some of the language that the author uses. So here's just a couple to whet your appetite here that I really, really liked. So this goes along with some of the things that I've said today. You'll see that it's the work, not the clock, that matters. Here's another one that I think is good. The bottom line is that you shouldn't hire people that you don't trust, and that you shouldn't work for bosses who don't trust you. I mean, come on now, how basic is that? That's the kind of world we all want to live in. So that's what working from remote is going to be giving us the opportunity to do. Here's another one that I thought was really good. Looking to big business for the latest productivity tips is probably not the smartest thing to do. The whole point of innovation and disruption is doing things differently than those that came before you. So if you're somebody who really gets off on being creative and innovating and doing things that are really meaningful and productive, you probably are not going to be wanting to go to work for companies that have been around for forever. You're probably going to be best suited in smaller startup organizations where they really value that creative and innovative spirit. Here's another thing that I think is interesting. Most of you are probably familiar with, is it Jim Collins and Good to Great? Jim Collins wrote Good to Great. And he talks in that book about how important it is to have the right people, not only on the bus, but in the right seats on the bus. That's what makes teams work. When you have the right people on the team and the right people in the right positions. I don't know if any of you guys are sports fans, but this whole thing that they're doing now on ESPN about the last dance for Jordan. I mean, you know, whatever you want to say about Jerry Krause, he was brilliant in terms of how he brought these men together, all so different, all with extremely strong personalities. And yet he brought them together and they were able to coalesce into a team, you know, and they were incredibly successful beyond, you know, our dreams. So that goes hand in hand with Jim Collins and his philosophies in Good to Great. So one of the things that these guys say about working remotely, and think about this, remote work speeds up the process of getting the wrong people off the bus and the right people on board. You're going to find out pretty quickly if you have the wrong people on your team. And it makes it a lot easier to do something about it and bring on the right people, which a lot of it goes back to making a good hire and understanding when you're making a hire where somebody's motivation is coming from. And the last thing I'm going to leave you with in terms of a quote is that if you hide in the herd, you're not likely to get ahead of the pack. So think about what it is you want to do, your why behind what it is you're trying to do with this job, with this company. If all you want to do is just, you know, put in a little bit more time to end out your years of working before you can successfully retire, well, then maybe you don't want to work that hard and put that much into this in terms of, you know, doing those things about creating a structure and having a self-awareness to understand where your motivation comes from. But if you're somebody that wants to make a difference and that wants to succeed at a high level, you're pretty much going to have to differentiate yourself. Okay, One more thing that I want to share with you before I let you go, because it's almost time to close this up, is that the other section that you're going to get on your outline is what we call digging deeper. And it's resources that include websites and books and TED Talks that are added as a supplement to this basic information of remote office not required. So if you enjoyed this topic and you feel like you want to learn more about it, this gives you some really solid places to get started with that. You can obviously go on Google and just Google the book or the guy's names, and you're going to get a lot of information. But what we try to do when we do this is, as I said in the beginning, we are doing this for you so that you don't have to take the time to read the book and try to digest all of this information, to try to find out how to learn more about this, to try to have the big picture concepts described to you in a great quote so that you can think about it without having to dig for it. That's what these book discussions are all about. And you'll see as you become more and more familiar with do-over.me and what we're doing is that some of the things that we talk about are things that are particularly business oriented, but they almost always have a personal component to them. So regardless of who you are or in what situation you find yourself, you're probably going to find new information in these book reviews that you weren't familiar with before. And that, as I said earlier, is part of what's going to make you trending and relevant in today's day and age, regardless of how old you are, but especially if you're an older worker. So it's 12:59. How about that for timing? And the only thing I got to tell you guys is it was kind of a disappointment that nobody had anything to say. So do you have anything to say now, or any questions or comments or things that you want to talk about before we wrap this up?
Oh, good topic. Pretty relevant for me.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Relevant for many.
Yeah. Okay, so just a reminder, my name is Cynthia Wade, and I'm the founder and managing director at do-over.me, and we are a not-for-profit that provides proven, practical, and professional support to anyone who's searching for meaningful employment. There's a lot of people out there that need our help these days. So if you can share this information with somebody, we would appreciate that you do that. If there's anything else that we can do for you, please just ask. Sometimes, we're not mind readers. And if you need something that we're not giving you, just tell us and we'll try to make it happen. And you're going to be receiving an email from me over the weekend that is going to have the outline and this file, Zoom file, attached to it. And so if you have any questions at that point, let me know. And pay attention on Thursday of next week, the 30th of April. We're going to do a Facebook Live, and we're going to tell you all about all of the fun things that we're going to be doing in May. And one more thing, if you've got time on Friday, we are doing online improv. And it's not about being funny, although I guarantee if you give us an hour of your time that you will laugh and you will learn and you will not think about coronavirus or COVID-19 during that hour. The only thing that you have to do is pay attention and be willing to be open to the moment. And I guarantee you, you'll laugh and have fun. So if there's anything else we can do for you, reach out to me at cynthia@do-over.me. Check out our website, do-over.me. It's all the same. And then the telephone number, if you want to reach me directly, is 630-402-0429. Thank you very much for your time and for your attention today. And I hope that you learned something. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.